The shadows never speak, they only follow. But sometimes, silence says more than any confession ever could.
Let's open with a challenge. Solo Leveling isn't just another anime about glowing swords and overpowering leads. It's a meditation on pain, on identity, and what happens when you get everything you ever wanted and still feel hollow inside. And that hollowness? That's where Jinwoo, our main character, lives. He's the kind of character that hardly raises his voice, but still commands attention. He gains power that would shatter cities, and yet, when he saves the people he loves, he struggles to smile. There's no victory lap, just quiet exhaustion. And it's that silence that speaks volumes. Because when we place Jinwoo next to someone like Andrew Tate, a man who loudly broadcasts dominance, who wears masculinity like armor, who tells the world he's untouchable, a strange comparison emerges. What happens when your past comes knocking? What happens when the shadow of who you were calls to the person you say you are? This isn't about who would win in a fight. It's about a deeper kind of integrity. Jinwoo never claimed to be perfect. He just acted. He carried corpses, he revived monsters, he bent morality for the sake of survival, and never once did he ask for an applause. Tate, on the other hand, curated a brand that invites applause for every move, but pivots when the past gets messy, which raises more questions. What's more suited for success in your life? Quiet conviction or loud contradiction? When your present doesn't align with your past, which version of you is the lie? Here's the core idea to contemplate.
Your past can't be the enemy. It was you. Paving a path toward a gilded mirror. Beautiful, but hollow.
We feel this in our gut when someone suddenly changes. When a friend starts speaking like a stranger. When a public figure gets exposed but never explains. It hits us as distrust, as unease, as a signal we can't quite name. But rarely do we say it this clearly. Whether you're building an empire on alpha quotes or leading armies of the undead, one truth remains. If your past self is too different from your present claims, people just start asking, was it all an act? This is the contradiction we'll explore, because Solo Leveling, by its own storytelling style, doesn't show us everything. We rarely get full windows into Jinwoo's mental state. We see the results, his choices, his power, but not always the reasoning. That leaves space for interpretation, criticism, admiration, and even projection. Tate, in contrast, has many windows, a constant feed of how he wants to be seen or how others paint him. But if that image conflicts with earlier actions, if those clips of control, exploitation, and contradictions aren't reckoned with, what then? It's by the window of the anime itself that we're able to see. But in the anime, we can often glaze over the justification behind Sung Jinwoo's darkest choices. That fact is also the point. It's time to wonder and to question. Because ThoughtRamen doesn't do surface level. We do that tricky, uncomfortable work of figuring out where stories reflect in us and where they warn us. So, this is about what happens behind the scenes, in the shadows, when no one's watching. And trust us, you're gonna want to stick around.
Up next, Jinwoo's silent rise from E-rank trash to the man who commands the dead.
In a world where portals open to monster-filled dungeons, hunters are the last line of defense. Jinwoo? He's barely a point in line at all. People don't expect him to fight. They expect him to stay out of the way. But here's what changes everything. The double dungeon. In Season 1, Episode 2, Jinwoo joins what seems to be a basic raid, until the party stumbles into a hidden chamber, a second dungeon, a hidden edge, traps, statues, an ancient god demanding sacrifices. People die screaming. Jinwoo is left, broken, bleeding, and alone. And then, something strange happens. Instead of dying, Jinwoo wakes up in a hospital bed with a system. Not a metaphorical system, a literal game interface. With quests, stats, skill trees, he's now the only person alive in his world with the ability to level up. It's anime logic, but here's where things get real. Jinwoo begins training in secret. He enters instant dungeons, faces monsters alone, and for the first time in his life, he starts to change. Not just physically, but mentally. The anime shows us the growth, but what it doesn't always show us is the cost. It's by the anime itself that we're able to see Jinwoo's power evolve, but in the anime, we fail to see just how much of himself he sacrifices to get there. Haunting thought. Even as his power grows and HP grows, Jinwoo becomes more withdrawn, his decisions more cold, his silence heavier. Let's talk about the Byunggu incident, one of the most ethically charged moments in the entire series. During the Jeju Island raid, Cha Hae-in, Jinwoo's glimpse of his past humanity and ideals, is gravely injured, and the only person that could heal her, Byunggu, is already dead. Jinwoo makes a decision. He summons Byunggu's corpse using his necromancer ability to save her life. It's one of those moments where the story doesn't hold your hand. There's no long internal monologue, no morality checklist, he just acts. While us viewers ponder and empathize. Was it pragmatic? Noble? Disrespectful to the dead? Yes? Maybe all of it? But here's what matters. Jinwoo still made that call, with a calm, stable frame of mind. Hardly flinch nor selfish delay. No plea for someone else to handle it. He takes the burden, owns the fallout, and moves forward. Compare that with Tate's response to ethical pressure. He reframes, redirects, dismisses. When questioned about exploitation in his webcam business, Tate would argue that net financial gain will offset potential damages. When called out on business schemes and strategies, he leans into them. That marginalized men motivated by him to do better offsets the ratio of men radicalized by his words. Jinwoo, in contrast, acts with conviction, but lets the consequences speak out for themselves. And this is where solo leveling becomes sneakily brilliant. It never tells you how to feel about Jinwoo. It just shows you what he does, and leaves a blank to fill in the meaning. We don't get flashbacks to a mentor explaining necromancer ethics. We don't get lectures about doing the right thing. We get Jinwoo, covered in blood, reviving the dead to save the living. It's not heroic in the classical sense. It's how he can keep others from death. Jinwoo's journey is also unique in that his transformation is internal as much as it is external. Sure, he gets stronger, but he also loses pieces of himself. His humanity, his capacity for joy, his emotional openness. Even after saving his mother, after everything, he admits that he still feels on edge. He still feels haunted. Still doesn't feel at peace. And that, maybe, is the cost of leveling up. You don't just get stronger, you get quieter. You start carrying choices no one else can see. So when we talk about integrity, about who someone is at their core, we have to ask, what kind of man revives a corpse to save a friend, and says nothing after? Not for applause, not for any optics, not even for moral high ground, surely. Just a selfish decision, because death approaches his loved one. Is Andrew the same? Jinwoo isn't framed as a saint. He's framed as someone who doesn't hide from morally gray situations, but also doesn't over-explain himself. He acts. He chooses. He carries the consequences. And in a world of live stream apologies and carefully spun narratives, that's a rare kind of strength.
And now, up next, let's meet the man who does the opposite, shall we? The one who is provocative in his speech.
Andrew Tate is many things: kickboxer, entrepreneur, provocateur, but above all, he's a persona architect. From the outside, he looks like someone who cracked the matrix. 4-time world kickboxing champion, business mogul, an army of followers who treat his every word like gospel. But dig a little deeper and you'll find a story built on sharp contradictions and an intense persona. Andrew Tate was born in Washington, D.C., but his story really takes shape in Luton, England, living in poverty. After his parents divorced and he moved there with his mom and siblings. His father, Emery Tate, a chess grandmaster and Air Force sergeant, known for his genius, a hard masculine frame, and of course the father of the notorious Tate brothers. Andrew described his father as a superhuman of keen perception and intellect, the man who taught him to see life in patterns, to fight for dominance, to treat emotionality as a weakness for warriors. Growing up battling against poverty, combat sports arrived in his early teen years. Eventually, his kickboxing coach and Bosnian War veteran, Amir Subasic, became a father figure to him. Amir honed Andrew's physical toughness and character in the ring. But here's where the duality kicks in. Tate's reality set in. After severe orbital injury during his kickboxing title fight, he yearned for a grander life, with more certainty than that of a full-time fighter. Tate pivoted hard into a world of business that blurred the lines between charisma and manipulation, lifestyle, supplements, cryptocurrency, and coaching. His webcam empire reportedly pulled in $600,000 per month. At its peak, he ran operations across 4 countries, employing women in what he later admitted involved emotional games to use his women to attract money. He called it smart, the internet called it shady, and the legal system called an investigation. Yet somehow, all of this became the brand. Tate didn't hide from the controversy. He weaponized it. He told followers, this is what winning looks like. You hate it because you're weak. And that's where integrity fractures. Because Tate's not claiming to be a villain. He's claiming to be the ultimate example, the man, the top G. But when your past is riddled with ethical shortcuts and your response is to say, that's just the game, you're building a castle on quicksand, telling impressionable fans to move in. How about Jinwoo? When Jinwoo crosses ethical lines, reviving the dead, hiding truth from allies, fighting to the death, he doesn't brag about it, he carries it, quietly. Tate? Nowadays, he attempts atonement via various avenues of services to benefit the young audience's finances and mindsets. But innately, any form of repentance or atonement is questionable. But integrity isn't about never being questioned. It's about how you respond when you are. And here's 2 related ideas. Jinwoo faced moral crises and never stopped feeling it. Tate faces a moral crisis and never admits regret. Even when the stakes escalate, human trafficking allegations, arrests, platform bans, Tate doesn't waver. He doubles down. The Matrix is after me. They fear a strong man. This is all proof that I'm right. Maybe it's resilience. Maybe it's branding. Maybe it's fear disguised as certainty. Because when everything you've built is a persona, you can't afford to let the mask slip, even for a second. But a deeper danger is when the audience starts to mistake that mask for a face. Tate's influence isn't limited to his bank account. Young men across the world adopt his phrases, mimic his posture, repeat his takes on women, success, and self-worth. And that's the real risk. Not that Tate is uniquely evil, but that his ability to dodge ethical reckoning becomes a blueprint for others. It's not. So when we talk about integrity and why it matters, it's not about being perfect. It's about facing your past with enough honesty that your present doesn't have to lie for you. Tate's story isn't over. Maybe he'll come clean, maybe he'll change, maybe he was right about the world. But so far, a pattern is clear. He commodifies his shadow, and that makes all the difference.
Now up next, we break it wide open. Jinwoo versus Tate, power versus persona, and why integrity might be the only stat that doesn't show up on screen, but decides everything.
Power is easy to admire until you realize its shadow hides something. Jinwoo and Andrew Tate are both seen as unstoppable. Both command respect. Both carry mythical auras. But only one of them consistently acts with a sense of responsibility, even when no one's watching. And the key difference? One of them integrates the darkness. The other performs over it. Let's talk about what the anime doesn't show us. Solo Leveling gives us a spectacle. Jinwoo slicing through monsters, commanding shadows, saving cities. But it rarely lingers on his internal wounds. We see him hesitate. We see him carry guilt. But we don't get long speeches about what it all means. There's a distance between what Jinwoo feels and what we're allowed to access, and that mirrors real life. A lot of people, especially men, carry burdens that they don't talk about. They don't know how, or they think it makes them weak. So the silence becomes the story. Jinwoo isn't stoic because he has no emotion. He's stoic because he doesn't know what to do with the parts of himself that he can't share. That's what makes him relatable, not his power, his restraint. Contrast that with Tate. We get everything. Tweets, streams, rants, debates. A constant feed of curated masculinity. And here's the thing. When someone tells you exactly who they are, over and over, without ever acknowledging contradiction, that's just shady self-awareness. It's branding. When Tate talks about being the top G, what he's really doing is reinforcing a structure. One where he controls the narrative so tightly that he never has to explain the parts that don't fit. The webcam business, just hustle. The emotional manipulation, that's how the world works. Relationships are transactional. Hardly ever pause. Only the next line, the next post, the next defense. Now, let's bring in the concept of the shadow, quietly. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." In simpler terms, if you don't deal with the parts of yourself that you'd rather hide, they don't go away. They just come out in uglier ways. Jinwoo lives with his shadow, literally. He commands it, but he's also afraid of it. He doesn't let it consume him, and he doesn't pretend it isn't there. Tate, on the other hand, veils a version of his shadow behind his brand. He takes parts of the shadow that most people will try to reconcile as control fantasy, violent tendencies, ethical disregard, and repackages them to empower him. His shadow is not exactly hidden away for none to learn from him. But we as consumers of content are so easily swayed not to focus on the lessons. And that leads us to another core idea. Jinwoo's power isn't hero-like. It's burdened and haunted, realistic, and real. Every time he levels up, it costs him something. His humanity, his connection to others, his peace of mind. Even when he achieves something so beautiful, like bringing back his mom from death, he feels the dissonance. He cries, he feels love, and still he feels off, because he knows he's not the same. In a weird poetic way, Solo Leveling and Andrew Tate's stories overlap. Tate wears his power like a badge. Jinwoo wears his like a shadow. Humble beginnings and a brush with supernatural success. From both characters arises a warning to not let your shadow seep out in uglier ways. It's your choice, ultimately, how you integrate your shadow. Let's bring this full circle.
You don't have to be famous or fictional to wrestle with integrity. You don't need shadow powers or Bugattis. You just need a moment where your past and your present don't line up. If this video left you thinking, even just a little, you're already leveling up. Because growth doesn't start with answers. It starts with better questions. Does the person you're becoming still respect the person you've been?